We're following the latest developments on the Trump administration's tariff decision. The U.S. is imposing tariffs of up to 25% on steel and 10% on aluminum imports from some of our closest allies, including the European Union, Canada, and Mexico. The U.S. is now bracing for retaliation, and there's growing fears this could trigger a global trade war. For more on this, let's bring in CBSN contributor Willis Sparks. He writes for Signal, a newsletter produced by G0 Media. Good to see you.
Good to see you, as always.
So, looking at the big picture here, what's the big takeaway from President Trump's decision here?
The big takeaway for me is, first of all, when you throw a punch to start a fight, no one knows how far that fight is going to go. In this case, President Trump is throwing punches at the European Union and Canada and Mexico after already throwing punches at China. He's basically trying to fight everyone at once.
This is mutually assured destruction here.
Well, it's
or asymmetrical.
It's the idea that, normally when a U.S. president comes into some kind of conflict, whether it's a real conflict or a trade conflict, they brag about their allies. We've got all these allies. You remember all of the Bush administration coalitions in Iraq, etc. And basically what Trump is saying is we don't need any allies. We're going to do this. We're number one. We're going to take this fight on ourselves, and we're perfectly capable of fighting everyone all at once. Now, is he right? We'll see. I mean, his point of view is, look, you have to throw punches sometimes, because if the rest of the world knows that you never throw punches, they are going to take advantage of you. They're going to put barriers in place that you don't have in place on your side. It's not fair to American workers. But whether this kind of fight works out benefiting American workers is an open question.
The president campaigned on bringing fair trade practices as he sees them to the United States. The question I guess I have is, could this kind of action damage our relationship with allies when it comes, for example, to what's happening in Syria? To use one example.
It already has. Maybe not necessarily on Syria, but it already has damaged the relationship in that President Trump, particularly when you're talking about Europe, is so unpopular in Europe that it becomes more difficult for a European leader to be seen to cooperate with President Trump. You pay a political price for cooperating with President Trump. Now, I don't want to overstate this because it's in the interests of the U.S. and European governments to cooperate on cyber attack defense, on counterterrorism. That continues. But to the extent that President Trump is presenting himself as a guy that's willing to use the same trade tools against our European allies and Canada and Mexico that he uses on China, he's poisoning the well a little bit that makes the politics a lot more complicated for European leaders.